Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. I thought I'd move into the other room so we could have the Christmas tree here and have it, the holiday feel to things. And we've got Bill Goodman, who hasn't been with us for a while. William, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Doing great. How are you? How are you guys doing?
Bill's gonna tell us now exactly when it's gonna turn cold and when we're gonna have our first big snow, right, Bill?
Down to the hour.
Yeah, sure.
Down to the hour and the inch, correct?
Oh, yeah, and I wish. I wish.
Well,
we can have a little fun with it later.
Bill is from the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Upton, New York, whose jurisdiction is northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, New York City, Long Island, and southern Connecticut. Does that work?
That's right.
Okay, good. Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight to this. I guess this is our final show before Christmas because we are going to be off. The Joe and Joe Weather Show is usually on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday if there's a storm going on. But with the Christmas holidays, and we like to spend time with our families as much as you folks at home and those of you on the chat board, you're going to spend time with your families. So we will be off tomorrow through Monday, Christmas Day, and we will be back Tuesday, the 26th, Boxing Day. So mark that down on your calendars. Robert Lomanicki, the first to hit the tip jar tonight. Thank you, Robert, for hitting Super Chat. We really do appreciate it. So I tell you what, let's let Joe Rao go first tonight because Joe's got this. I mistakenly put the Star of I don't know why I got that in my head because Joe sent me this message that he wanted to do this presentation about the winter solstice. And for some reason, my head went to the Star of Bethlehem. Because
I may have mentioned at one time to you that, and I do this for libraries and civic groups virtually. I give talks in both meteorology and astronomy on various topics, and one of the topics in December is a scientist's view as to what may have been a natural explanation for the Star of Bethlehem. What I'm going to do right now is a snippet from that show, but it has nothing to do with what the star was all about. It's just since tomorrow night we have the winter solstice, which comes just a few minutes before 10:30 p.m. I thought I'd talk about the winter solstice, but also tie it in with the Christmas season, because Joe and Bill, and maybe for many of you, what we are celebrating right now really isn't the anniversary of the birth of Christ. That, according to the Bible, or at least from what the Bible hints to us, may actually have occurred sometime in the spring, not necessarily in December. In fact, if you look in the Bible, you'll find that there's no mention of the date December 25th. However, there are some implications here, and it again ties in with the solstice. So let me just, this is going to be PowerPoint, so I'm going to bring the PowerPoint screen up. And I think Joe said that he's going to try to shift over to a more comfortable position. So maybe while I'm talking, he'll do that.
I probably will. So go ahead. Go ahead. I'll see if I can maneuver here.
Okay, but I just want to make sure. Is everybody seeing on their screen the
December
calendar?
25th? Yes, we're seeing it. I am monitoring you technically, Joe Rao. If something should go wrong, I will stop you and ask you to wait while I correct the issue, but so far, no issues.
Okay, well, very good. So we know from the story of Christmas in the Bible that in the book of St. Luke says that on the night when Christ was born, there were shepherds keeping watch in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And for over 1,600 trips around the sun, December 25th has been celebrated by most Christians as the date of the birth of Jesus. Again, even though St. Luke gives us a clue in that biblical reading that is surely wrong. You see, December in Judea is a rainy season. It's a time when shepherds keep their flocks under cover. But in the springtime, the late spring, May and June, that's a different story. The weather has moderated, and shepherds then take their flocks out into the fields. this is the time when lambs are being born, and flocks must be guarded through the night. Now, seasons can be explained by astronomers. As the Earth goes around the sun once each year, the sun shines sometimes more on the northern hemisphere. We call that summer for us, and sometimes more on the southern hemisphere, as will be the case tomorrow night, winter for us. And between each of these two extremes, we have a time when the sun is shining equal amounts for a whole day on all parts of the Earth. The equinoxes from the Earth, as it seems even to us today, as it did to man looking skyward even before the dawn of history, the sun appears to move in the sky. On the first day of summer, in late June, we see the sun climb high into the sky at noon. It rises about 8 or 9 hours before noon, and it sets about 8 or 9 hours after noon, and the weather correspondingly turns warm. At the fall and spring equinoxes, the sun is in the sky again just about 12 hours. But on the first day of winter, which again comes tomorrow, first moment of the solstice, 10:27 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow night, on the first day of winter, the sun is in our sky for only about 8 or 9 hours total, and it takes a very low path in the sky and is very low, relatively speaking, to spring and summertime at noontime. And as a result of this low path, and as a result of the fact that it's in the sky for such a short length of time, correspondingly, we get cold from so little exposure to the sun. Now, in ancient days, people had no understanding of this machinery. They thought something might break down someday, and the sun would continue that southward journey, never to return. The lowering of the sun was cause for fear and wonder. Again, this is for the time when ancient people didn't have newspapers or magazines or television. They kept watch of nature, they kept watch of the sky, and they took note of the fact that in late December, that sun took a very low path as compared to previous months. And what they were concerned about was, hey, what would happen if something broke down in this machinery and somehow the sun kept going south until maybe one day it would go below the horizon and never returned, in which case, of course, it would be dark, it would be cold, and eventually all life on Earth would die off. And that was the main concern about this. So when they saw the sun stop in late December and slowly began to come back to a higher location, what did the people do? They rejoiced. They felt the promise that spring was going to return. Most cultures have had winter solstice celebrations, and some adapted it to other events. At the time of Julius Caesar, the winter solstice, the first day of winter, actually fell not on December 21st or 22nd, but fell on December 25th. This was known as Mother's Night in ancient England. In Persia, they celebrated the birthday of Mithra, the Sun King. And in 275 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian began a new worship of the sun, with the primary feast day falling on December 25th. Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the incomparable sun. A traditional Roman festival of the late harvest.
Nice picture, by the way.
Well, a traditional Roman celebration of the late harvest was the Saturnalia, and that was celebrated again on December 25th. And what was the tradition of the Saturnalia? Gifts were exchanged. Homes, streets, and buildings were decorated. People came home for the holidays, and everybody was in a happy party mood. Now, also, in those days, Christians were considered to be outlaws. When they were caught, they were often sent to the Colosseum to be fed in public to hungry lions, much to the amusement of the Romans. But in spite of the great risks, the Christians wanted to celebrate the birthday of Jesus, and they wished to do so openly. So the simplest thing to do was to celebrate their event while all those about them were celebrating something else. So in this way, the use of December 25th began as a convenience and became a tradition. In the 4th century, when the Roman Emperor Constantine was converted, Christianity became the state religion, and its festivals were celebrated openly with all their traditional trappings. And so that tradition has survived all the way to our time. And so that may be why we celebrate the birthday of Jesus on the 25th of December, again, associated with the occurrence of the solstice, the winter solstice. It was a date that was not officially established until 340 AD. And again, if Luke is correct in the Bible, the birth probably occurred more like the late spring, maybe in May or June, as opposed to December. But this is all speculation. We cannot be sure. But we can be sure about one thing. After this brief pause of astronomy and a little bit of talk and discussion about the winter solstice, now we move on to weather, and we now move on to Joe and also to Bill, who will, along with myself, talk about what we can anticipate in what looks to be a rather bland Christmas holiday season weather-wise, at least in this part of the country. Joseph.
So, well,
Yeah.
I saw Ruben Fairchild on the chat board again. So he's happy that he seems to think that because of him I changed the set. I quote changed the set. I walked out of one room and into another. I wanted the Christmas tree in the background tonight. But yeah, we've got Christmas coming up. I think the thing I miss most about Christmas is the fact that I sang in choir for 20 years, and I don't sing in choir anymore because the choir I was in doesn't exist anymore. But it was, it's probably the one thing I do miss about Christmas. Of course, I've also come to the conclusion, by the way, that the three wise men were the world's worst shoppers. I mean, really, you're going up to somebody's house with a newborn baby. So what do? One show, right? First of all, you come uninvited. So I mean, didn't even give poor Mary and Joseph a chance to sweep out the manger. And they come with one comes with gold, which is sort of like showing up at a baby shower with a gift certificate. It's just crass. And, and the other two show up with frankincense and myrrh, which begs to the old adage that when a man doesn't know what to bring for a gift, he buys perfume. So anyway, it's nice to have Bill Goodman here because we haven't seen Bill for a while. Bill, I before we talk about what's going on now, I just kind of want your take about what happened this past weekend, because you and I were talking a little bit before the storm, kidding around about, and I even said it to Joe that NHC should make it a tropical storm just so that they can make it, just so that they can, and at the same time make it post-tropical. But laying that aside, this thing really just was quite the animal. I mean, it really was, and to see it even what really got to me though was the fact that we were in a mid-cycle between the full new moon and the full moon, so the tides should not have been crazy. It's not like we had onshore winds for days ahead of time. So what drove that? Because the tidal flooding was in some places the worst, the highest since well, not to Sandy's levels, but I think it's the high. I saw Rich Hoffman said that it was the highest tides the South Shore of Long Island had since Sandy.
Is that right? I mean, let's not forget last was it December 23rd. That was another huge event. Yeah, it doesn't take much. You just have a lot of a sustained period of strong winds, and you're going to do it. Actually,
was it the fact that it was the south wind? I mean, as opposed to say an east wind or because we've had instances where we've been piled on with northeast winds for days at a time, but over the course of days and everything builds up, and of course timing it with whatever moon phase you're in. But it's not that often that we get systems like this that straddle the coast or just inland of the coast all the way up and go over or just west of New York City and then up the Hudson River. So I mean that has to make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, we had even compared to the storm we had a week ago, that was more of a south-southwest flow, and I think we had, with that kind of brought in some warmer air just off the deck, and you didn't have the low levels were not unstable enough to really get really widespread strong winds. This
Right.
one, winds off the ocean, more out of the southeast. So your winds were stronger, and I think just the direction we are able to pile up more water in the in the New York Bight. That the way just the shape of the coastline, and that worked with Sandy too, where the water piles up and has no place else to go. And of course, that's another thing with the South Shore bays. When water gets in there, uh, it can take a while to drain out if you have high seas or strong winds offshore. And I think there was a combination of all that.
Yeah,
Some of the tide traces actually showed during low tide that there was a little peak of about the water levels went up about a foot, maybe a little bit more with the strongest winds. Thank God that didn't happen
right.
at the time of high tide. That would have been a real disaster for the coast.
I saw where in Charleston had their highest tidal surge since Hurricane Hugo.
Wow.
And of course this was a storm that impacted from Florida all the way up to Maine.
Yeah, pretty widespread. And I guess that's another thing. A lot of these winter storms that produce these high winds for us. They have a very long fetch of wind out of the south. It's not just us. The trajectory of those winds goes back pretty far out over the Atlantic a lot of the time.
Joe, do you have a question while I'm switching maps here?
No, I agree with what Bill is saying, and in fact, you go back to Sandy. We had I believe we had a full moon during Sandy, or close to a full moon. However, the moon with Sandy was near apogee, or near its farthest point from the Earth, and so yeah, the tug was such that on the Earth's tidal forces that were that. Combine that with Sandy, we had all of that mayhem that went on back then. Hard to believe that's more than a decade ago. But had the moon been near perigee, closest to the Earth, the tidal forces would have been like 33 or 40% stronger. And if you remember the damage that Sandy did, can you only imagine what would have been happened if we had had even higher tides or stronger tidal forces working in conjunction with that moon when Sandy was around? And again, with this particular storm that we had, as Joe mentioned, we were actually closer to a first quarter moon, the so-called neap tide, the tide or neutral tide that comes between the astronomically high tides of new moon and full moon. And still, we managed to get that southerly wind to pile the water up along, especially the south shore of Long Island, to produce all of those damaging conditions that we saw not only in Long Island, but also in New Jersey. If I recall, Joe, on Sunday, we were talking about how critical it was the turn of the wind direction for New Jersey, because we said that if it didn't turn quick enough, that the southerly winds could also have a major impact on New Jersey, and unfortunately, they did.
Yes.
And caused all that problem. It just goes to show you sometimes with these situations that sometimes it could be a mere matter of hours that can make a tremendous difference in just how much damage can occur with the tidal effects.
Well, we're in a calm time now, so at least we don't have another storm to worry about, and hopefully we won't have another one like that one. But now, of course, all the winter weather lovers are sort of chomping at the bit, because here we are, the 20th of December, and I've made the point that it's the whole country, Bill. There's hardly any snow anywhere, and in fact, through this weekend, unless you're scaling the Sierra Nevadas in California or the Cascades up in the Northwest, or maybe a few peaks in the Rockies, there's not going to be any snow falling anywhere. And the snow cover across the United States is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's non-existent.
Yeah, brown Christmas.
Pretty much. But the pattern is the pattern is changing. It is going to change. The question is, are we going to go? I always say the pattern change you want, the pattern change you get may not necessarily be the same thing, and you may not like what you get. it does look like we'll go to something certainly less worse for snow lovers and winter weather lovers than what we have now. I wonder, have you been? There's a couple of things about it that I wanted to ask you. So I don't know how much you've been looking. Have you been looking at what's been going on up at the stratosphere?
I have not been paying close attention to that. Just sort of looking at more at the just the teleconnections going into late month that I made that they look more promising. Going as we get into January.
Well, I'm gonna start off. I'm just gonna bring up on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, or I don't know if you have the show up on another window, but I'm just bringing up the 10 millibar, where the polar vortex is stretched out east-west from Europe to Asia, and it seems like that we're just kind of sitting in this sort of ridge position uh, in the stratosphere. But over the next 2 weeks, uh, they've been talking about you know Dr. Judah Cohen's been talking about it, Dr. Amy Butler's been talking about it, of big stratospheric warming event, and you could sort of see it on the 10 millibar map. And then the vortex tends to pivot around. I'm just kind of wondering, do we need the actual vortex itself to either split? I mean, what if it just migrates down to north central Canada? Uh, I mean, do we really need it to split in two?
I guess you could. What is it? I mean, there we talk about splits, and I guess there's. I guess you could have it elongate in a direction that's kind of favorable. Trying to think of the. Yeah, like I said, I'm not. I have not been up as much on that as I have been more on just the near the nearer term pattern going into late month and early January. So.
All right. Well, so you brought up
So
teleconnection,
I'm
so
not
I'll,
sure. And of
I'll
course, sometimes, of course, the other thing is you could have a stratospheric warming event, and the signal you're looking for doesn't affect us as much as maybe some other part of the northern hemisphere. I know, we've been talking about that not too long ago, and you had brought that up. So
right. Well, yeah, because I'm not sure. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, is this bullish? Is it bearish? It's hard for me to figure out. And then, of course, there's always the issue of coupling, which is, what
yeah,
does what happens up there, does it couple down to the lower atmosphere? I also just brought up the Arctic oscillation teleconnection, which is right now at 3 standard deviations above the mean. I mean, that's pretty high. But it is
yeah,
forecast to crash to neutral within a matter of days, and then it starts to go negative as we approach January 1st. So I would say that is probably, we could put that a check in the box that, well, we'd like it to, you want to see it go to -1 or -2. It's not quite there yet, but at least it's heading in the right direction. And the other teleconnection that I was noticing, um, which for the longest time has had a tough time going positive, and that's the PNA. The PNA, let me, there we go. The PNA, the Pacific North America Index right now is just slightly positive, and it's forecast to go to a little over +1 standard deviation, and then it drifts back toward the neutral line to around January 1st. These teleconnections, at least through the month of November and the first part of December, have been just sort of straddling that neutral line all the way through. There's been no real extreme. The AO went negative in a big way, but there's been no extreme pull one way or the other. And I think that kind of tells you, when you look at what's going, the way the pattern has been. It's just been this, the screaming Pacific jet, and there's just this sort of blah zonal type pattern with occasional deep troughs that come into the eastern part of the United States, and you don't get any cold air out of that, or I should say that you get shots of dirty cold air that last for all of about a day or two.
yeah, exactly. And even in the long term, it looks like we get any weather systems coming in, we get any shots of cold air. It looks like they they don't look all that impressive. Or if you have a high, if you have a high nearby, it doesn't look all that strong. Not like a classic high to really deliver or and sustain cold air when you get a storm coming in.
Now, Joe, I'm bringing up Mrs. Ann Shambles. Okay, because the upper.
After you bring up Mrs. Ann Shambles, I have a graphic that I took from Weather Trends 360 concerning the snow cover from this year versus last year. And before you bring that up, I want to just tell all the snow lovers out there, make sure you have your Kleenex or your tissue ready, because you may be crying after you see that particular graphic.
Well, I'm looking at. I got the Ann Shambles up, Bill, and of course, we all know that at least through, certainly going through this weekend and probably all, into next week, there's nothing here that suggests anything other than what we've been going through. However, we've got we're going to have a weather system for Tuesday into Wednesday. That trough is going to take its time moving east and offshore, and while that's happening in the Pacific, there's been this persistent trough from Alaska to just off the west coast that seems to be weakening. The ensembles the last 4 or 5 days show that trough weakening, and we're seeing ridging come up into the Pacific Northwest and also below normal heights across the Gulf states and the East Coast, up almost all the way up to northern New England. So, your opinion, sir? What do you think?
I guess we got some changes in the offing. I at least before New Year's, I don't know. I don't know how favorable that's going to be. We really do have to get through that system next week before.
It's all after that. It's all after that. So we're looking at the first week of January, really, for everything. Where that's the first opportunity, I think, where you might get chances. Mike, one of the things I'm thinking of though is that it's been not so much in the east, okay, not so much in the east, but in the plains, in the western Great Lakes, but especially into the plains, it's been pretty warm, and I just wonder without a really good Arctic air mass, how long is it going to take for that warmer air, for the atmosphere to basically cool down? Because it's going to need a good solid cold air mass. I don't know if you're going to be able to get that even in this sort of favorable upper air flow, because it hasn't even really been that cold in Canada.
No, it hasn't. With the ensembles, I mean, you have above normal heights through a lot of Canada, but at least the flow is a little bit more favorable. It looks like do we maybe see the first hints of some cross-polar flow during that time, with the ridging that builds up over Western North America in early January.
Well,
I guess in Western Canada. This
is definitely a cross-polar look. It's also one where you've got, I think, potential for an active southern jet stream. So it certainly would argue that you could have some opportunities once we get into this new pattern. And by the way, all the models are showing this. The European, in particular, has sort of taken the lead on it, seems to want to get it in here a little bit faster than the GFS, but they all get to the same place by the time we get to the first of the year. So that's that. I think that's encouraging. The CFS model, or as you know, I love to call it the CAD forecast 4-letter word that starts with an S model. It seems to also be in line with a colder look for the month of January.
I just want to thank the 4 folks who have hit the tip jar early in the show. Robert Lomnicki. Okay, Lomanicki. And Robert, if you're still watching, I understand people mispronouncing. A lot of people
Rao,
Rios. So I can empathize. I will get your name correct before too much longer. Robert Lomanicki, Maggie P. from Colorado, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you, Maggie. The chairman, Scott Briller and Brandon Doherty. In fact, the chairman wants to point out, Joe and Bill, 15 Decembers that have received only a trace of snow in Central Park. Only 2 ended up with above average snowfall for the season at Central Park. And yesterday, if you remember, Joe, I said, let's take a look at the 30-year average.
Right.
Not the 30-year average, but, we look at long-term weather records over a 30-year period. And over the last 30 years, we've actually had 8 Decembers with only a trace of snow. And one of those 2 Decembers that had above average snowfall, which Scott has mentioned, one of those 2 was the winter of 2015-2016. December of 2015, we only had a trace of snow. But the very next month, late that month, we had the famous the record snowfall, 27.5 inches at Central Park, biggest one-day snow event in the 160-year history of records at Central Park. And that pretty much was the whole winter in 2015, 2016, because the winter overall ended up with 32.8 inches, and 27.5 fell in one big lump sum with that one storm. But all the other events in the last 30 years, 7 out of the 8 trace of snow Decembers were well below normal. And in fact, if you take all of those 8 trace periods in December for the last 30 years, you end up with a average of 12.83 inches. And I think the average for Central Park is what, Bill, about 30 inches for typically a winter season. So we ended up
pretty close to 30.
So we ended up with 12.8 or 13 inches as opposed to the normal 30 in those 8 times that we had only a trace of snow in December. I've always said that you're going to tell, if you're a snow lover, you're always going to be able to tell what the winter is going to bring you in terms of snowfall based upon what happens in December. 7 out of 8 times in the last 30 years, we've ended up with very low snow totals. But you know what? We don't have much to beat from last year. I said also that in those years where we had almost a paucity of snow, last year we had 2.3 inches at Central Park. And I said in those years where we had like single-digit numbers for snow at Central Park, we always came back the following year with a much, much larger number. So if we end up with 15 inches, 16, 20 inches of snow, still below normal, but still a heck of a lot more than what we had the previous winter season.
By the way, your graphic is up on the screen, Joe.
There it is, folks. There it is. Now, this is from Weather Trends 360. By the way, normally when we put up a graphic, and we always give them credit, it comes from Bill Kirk, the president of Weather Trends 360, which we refer to as Captain Kirk, because he served no, it's true. He served honorably during Operation when we were in Iraq back 20 some odd years ago. But Bill Kirk has taken some time off now, and believe it or not, Joe, these graphics are courtesy of Corporal Klinger.
Oh, very nice.
Corporal Klinger is filling in for Captain Kirk.
Okay.
You could see current snow cover. This is as of a few days ago, 18 December, about 2 days ago. Last year, 44% of the contiguous United States had snow cover. This year, look at this. Look at it. 14% of the country has measurable snow cover. 14%. And as Bill mentioned, it looks like it's going to be a brown Christmas, not just for here in the New York area, but for much of the country. This may be the browniest and snowless Christmas nationwide in over 20 years. This is crazy.
Bill, you're not happy about that, right?
It is what it is. I've gotten more than used to not too much snow through December and even into part of January, especially in El Nino seasons. Seems to be.
Speaking of El Nino, since I knew you were going to bring this up.
Oh, I love this. But hold on, I'm sorry about that. I love Tom Contino. Love you, Tom. He said it on the chat board. So sick of Joe Rao. He's a notorious snow hater. Now, am I talking like a snow hater? I'm only quoting statistical information. Did I say outright I hate snow? Did I? I didn't say that. I'm only quoting the facts, Tom. And I have you know that, and Joe will back me up on this, 30, 40 years ago, I was about the biggest snow lover. Whenever we had even a slight chance of a snowfall or a flurry, I used to jump up and down like that guy in the New York Jets, the guy in the sack exchange.
Right.
What was his name? You remember him? I forgot his name now. That happens when you get into your 60s. You don't remember the events. But I mean, I used to jump up and down and say, yeah, let's do it. Now, do I hate snow? I have a 265-foot driveway, and when it snows even a few inches, I got to be out there with the snow blower. By the way, when I was working at News 12, guess who was out there with the snow blower? Mrs. Rao. Mrs. Rao was so happy that I'm retired now, and I'm the one who's out there doing. But you learn to hate snow.
She fixed your snow blower, Joe. She fixes it. She fixes snow blowers. She fixes chainsaws. She changes oil on the car. She changes headlights. Okay.
Amazing.
I mean,
and Renata says on the chat board, Tom, he speaks the truth. Yeah. See?
I mean, where do you find these women, for Christ's sake? Woman, singular.
Anyway, I did not, personally, I don't have to go and drive it like poor Bill. Bill, you must have mixed emotions when you see it start to snow and you know it's going to be like 10 inches by tomorrow morning, and you know that your shift is just about ready to start, and you have to get in the car and travel out to the weather office at Upton, knowing that when you finish your shift, you're going to have to go out and shovel out or dig out all that snow from your car, right? I mean, I've had...
Well, I'm sort of in the same boat as you are right now, because I had... I had 5 kids that were more than willing to go out and do all the shoveling while I was at work. Now they're all grown. They're grown. They have their own lives. They're not going to come here and shovel my snow. That's up to me now.
Yeah, but but are they with you when you're at the weather office? Those 5 kids, and you go out in the parking lot. Because I can remember, I can't speak for Joe, but when I was at News 12 Westchester and we had a big snowfall, and they, all right, Joe, you can go outside. It's like 8 inches of snow on my car.
You were always the last to get home. I was always the last. I would get home when the last flake fell.
Right.
And everything was untouched.
Right.
It's like you worked a long shift. You drove with your life in danger all the way. I guess the one thing I can look back on and say, in all the years that I drove, and it was 30 plus years of driving, I've probably driven in every snowstorm, certainly every snowstorm in the 2000s, every the blizzard of 96 and all the rest of it. Knock on wood, I never once got into an accident. Never once. So I'm happy about that. I got good. I had 4-wheel drive, and I had 4-wheel drive when most people didn't have 4-wheel drive. So it did make it easier. But I thank God that I never had an accident. I just love the fact that on the chat board we've got Ruben Fairchild, who deep down inside wants to be a set designer, okay? And then you've got Tom Contino, who basically wants to be a program director. He wants to change the anchors on a show because he doesn't like you, apparently, because Joe, you're a snow miser.
Dave Carter, by the way, you're right. It was Gastineau, Mark Gastineau.
Mark Gastineau. I was trying to remember.
Every time this is now we're talking about the Jets of the 1980s or whatever. When Mark Gastineau got a sack of a quarterback or knocked somebody out of it, there he was jumping up and down, going like this. Yeah. And that's how I was, Tom. That's how when we had a chance for a big winter storm, I'm jumping up and down saying, yeah, do it. But now, Tom, after all of these years, I will say there's a good part. Initially, when the snow is falling, and when
after all these years, the Jets still haven't gone to the Super Bowl.
That's right. But now, at least initially, I could sit by the window in the rocking chair and watch and Renata comes over with the hot chocolate, and we sit down and we watch the snowfall. And then after it accumulates 8 or 10 inches, she looks at me and she says, "Well, you going out?" And I said, "I guess so. I'm going out." And there I go. But but I don't have the stress. I don't have that stress now that I did even just a few years ago of getting the phone call from my news director or from the executive producer at the station saying, "Joe, you got to come in now. We need you." and I'd have to zoom off. And Joe, there was one, it was the day before New Year's Eve, December 30th, I think it was 2000. It was a Saturday. And I get the phone call at I get this phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning. Joe, you have to get in there. We don't have anybody at the station, because normally at 6 a.m. on Saturday back then we didn't have, full scale weather coverage. We just had a news cut in. Joe, it's snowing real hard, and I had to drive from Levittown, Long Island, to Yonkers, and already when I got on the road, there was 5 inches of snow on the ground. You want white knuckle? Drive on the Northern State Parkway, Throgs Neck Bridge, Sawmill Parkway with 5 and 6 inches of snow on the ground, and no, we don't have to do that anymore.
No, we don't, and I could certainly.
It's funny you mentioned that exact same storm. I was doing the exact same thing driving from my apartment to the Mount Holly forecast office where I worked at the time. The same exact thing. It was about 5-6 inches of snow on the ground.
Oh God. Memories.
Yes.
Yeah. and now Tom Contino comes on and says, well, Joe Rao's a snow hater. Tom, go through what Joe or Bill or I have gone through in servicing the general public and having to go driving through all these crazy storms or whatever like that. And let's see after 10 or 20 or 30 years how you feel about snow. All right?
And what thanks did we get? Joe and I are, no longer employed by these companies, and in my case, gladly so. I don't want to speak for Joe, but I'm happy. I'm in the woods. When it snows here, it's gorgeous here in North Georgia. The El Nino, since you brought it up before, what are your thoughts on that? Because we had on the great Dave Tolleris was on last night. He thinks the El Nino is peaked and was going to start to weaken. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he's probably right about that. But I mean, there's a certain lag time between when that weakening starts and when you get the effects in the atmosphere. And this El Nino hasn't really behaved like a
No, it really hasn't.
Classic strong one. And that's we've been talking about that all along.
Well, I have the latest Pacific sea surface temperature anomalies. I'll put them up on the screen here. And
Bobby Rao, please, would you stop it? Would you please stop this? He says, Tom Contino, please don't talk about my Uncle Joe that way. I'm not your Uncle Joe, Bobby. We have the same surname. I am not related to you. I've said this over and over again. I am not related to Bobby Rao. So that's all I have to say. We got all these people, these protagonists on the board here lately. We got. He
probably thinks that you could send him a case of the sauce.
Yeah,
probably. Oh yeah, everybody asks about that. Even for God's sake, the Archbishop of New York, when I had a chance to sit down with him, Cardinal Dolan.
Yes.
First thing out of his mouth is, now tell us about that marinara sauce recipe, Joe.
Oh, Jesus.
All right.
I just got just real quick on the sea surface temperature map.
His name is Dolan. He should tell you about the Knicks and the Rangers.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been looking. I've been calling up this map every couple of days since late October. It doesn't look to me like it's gotten any stronger. It certainly. And now I've been watching this area of cold water that's coming up from the Antarctic and shooting up the west coast of South America, and starting to reach in to that area, the easternmost area of the El Nino zone. I got to think that that's going to soon get there and start to erode the El Nino away.
I guess so. An El Nino typically, a lot of times El Nino does tend to weaken as you get out of the peak of winter and go into the springtime. It seems like like some similar events that's kind of following a trajectory that I've seen it follow before. So I guess it's just a question of how quickly that happens.
All right. So, what is it that you're doing for Christmas, Mr. Bill?
Me, I'm going to be on the day shift at the forecast office.
You're working?
Yeah, 8 to 4, and then I joined my family for Christmas dinner.
That's
Get
good.
home just in time.
I worked enough Christmases over the years, so it's I'm no stranger to that. I actually kind of liked it because I would have when I worked at Pix, the show we only had the one show at 10 o'clock, so I didn't need to get there till 7. So I would
Mhm.
I would usually we would go to either my parents or my mother-in-law's, and then I would leave from there at like 6 o'clock or so, and then just go into the picks and do what I had to do. It was nice because I had the whole day really, and I got a full day's pay for just working 3 hours. Worked for me.
I worked a
Yeah,
few.
and
I worked a few Christmases over at News 12. Just not too many because I did like you, Joe. I used to fill in. I used to take like that week off. But I will say that when the Dolan family owned News 12, if you had to work at Thanksgiving, if you had to work Christmas, you didn't go hungry.
Yeah, you got
They
food.
they brought food in. In fact, I had one Thanksgiving. I even called Renata and I said, "Do I really have to come home?" Because the table, the spread that they've set up here in the break room is just nothing short of incredible. P.S. I will tell you that ever since the company was taken over by Altice, that the current owners who come from Europe, people who work on the holidays at News 12, uh, brown bag it. You know, you're coming in for work. You know, you expect something special that you're coming in on a holiday. That nothing. And I've heard this from more than a few people who still are working there. After I left and a number of other people were left or were told to leave. It's not like it used to be. So at least back in the day, if you had to work a holiday over there, News 12, they softened the blow for you, and the schedule was, as long as there was no big storm, it was a fairly easy shift to go through. So, and I could Joe and I know how it feels, Bill. I did just the opposite though. Like on Thanksgiving, before going into work at my mother-in-law's house in New Hyde Park, we would have an early Thanksgiving dinner, like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then as soon as the dinner was over, I'd throw my monkey suit on and go over to News 12 to do my shift.
Right.
So with you, it's just the opposite. You do your shift and then you come home and you join your family members Christmas time. And it's good that you're not going to have a major storm to deal with this particular.
Mr. Ruben Fairchild, Joe, says that
yeah.
that we should do more shows over the holidays, and that
I saw that.
we're taking too many days off in between. Really? I'll tell you what, Ruben. Why don't you put $1,000 in the tip jar, or maybe even better still, so
he never puts anything in the tip
right,
jar.
So right, or put $1,000.
We got so many wonderful people we got so many wonderful people who and we do not ask for money. We don't ask for any. You folks do it on your own.
No, we don't. But I'm asking him for money, okay? Because he wants us to build a new set. He wants us to work. He wants us to work 8 days a week.
Right, exactly. So he wants us to get a new set. He doesn't want us to take off. He wants us to work more shows over the holidays.
Maybe he's.
And by the way,
maybe,
I noticed,
Joe. Maybe
he's added Mr. now. Just the other day, it was just simply Ruben Fairchild. He's added the Mr. again. He's Mr. Fairchild.
Maybe he's an Altice executive.
Maybe. Hey,
work every day, no time off.
He's like Mr.
Pay.
Marshall he's like at the Gotham Bus Company, Mr. Marshall. or I'll go up to him like Ralph. You're right. You're absolutely right. Mullen's the man I should go for promotion.
Right. Every Christmas you'll get a can of a scoop of Cran Mars. God. Well, I'm going to be with my grandkids on Christmas Eve. I'll be at my daughter's house, and then I'm going to be with my grandkids on Christmas Day because they're going to be at my house. And I plan to just relax over the next. I don't know if you could see it on the camera shot. Let me just see if if it's visible, if I get out of the way, maybe if I hold the camera up. Um, Lots of presents under the tree, which is
Ruben's
nice.
there.
No, and JJ, yeah.
And he's still at, and Joe, he's still at it. I mean, we just got a hit from Ken Musillo. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Hitting the tip jar, and two rows down below Ken's contribution is Mr. Ruben Fairchild. He says, "I would also suggest you do shows from the road."
Yeah, all right, sure. I'll tell you right while we're driving. Okay.
I tried that once, remember?
Yes, you did. Let's do it while we're driving. Okay.
Yeah, not going to do that one again.
Yeah, it was 5 inches of snow on the ground, right, Bill?
Oh God.
Not that bad. It was before some big storm. Now I don't know. I don't know what possessed me to do that.
Any final thoughts here? Because it's coming up on 8:30, and I have a cigar and a glass of wine that are waiting for me.
Oh, very good.
You got your cigars ready for Christmas, Bill?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, good.
I've been dipping into them already. It's strange. I had to work Christmas Day. I have to work Christmas Day and that whole weekend, but I've had time off before and I'll have time off after. So that's my that's my R&R time.
Light up in the office.
Out there. What's that?
Light up in the office.
Oh yeah, that'll
play.
yeah, that'll go great. Well, at least I'll get some more time off out of the deal. I just won't get paid. That's
you won't
all.
get paid, correct?
You know what we're missing? What we're missing, Joe?
What are we missing, Joe?
We had you on back in the late 70s on KWO35, and now everything is automated. I really wish we.
And it's down. I saw a message. It's down right now.
Uh-oh.
KWO is down.
Uh-oh.
It is.
Don't shoot the man. That I know nothing about it.
I didn't say it was. I didn't say it was your doing. I mean, is it a coincidence that it's down and you are here? I don't know. I'm going to say
pure coincidence.
Pure coincidence.
Pure coincidence.
Okay. You didn't pull the plug on the way out. No.
But what we're missing now is hearing, if it's not automated. If it weren't automated, we'd be able to hear Bill Goodman, his dulcet tones on KWO35. You know,
I haven't. I don't think I've heard. I don't think I've listened to that in decades.
Yeah, same here either. Well, of course we listen to it to make sure. We listen to it on the job to make sure that it's broadcasting. That's
right.
Bobby Whitaker just hit the tip jar. Thank you, Bobby. Really appreciate it for hitting super chat. Yeah, you got it.
Brendan Doherty comes on with a great thing. He said he's addressing Ruben Fairchild. He says, "You would have paid for Joe and Joe's health care."
Oh God. Well, you're already on Medicare, Joe. I start Medicare at the end of January.
Have you figured everything out?
Well, I don't need B because I have private insurance, so I don't need B right now.
Okay.
So that works. And Bill's still employed, so.
Oh yeah, they'll wheel me out of that place. I know it.
Well, Bill's got a ways to go, I think, before he gets to the big 6'5", right, Bill?
Another four and a half.
So you're only 4 behind me.
Okay.
Yeah. Not far behind.
And I'm only 12 behind Joe. Actually, 3. Oh, I'm 3 behind.
Yeah, No Mercy show now.
No,
Wikipedia, yeah, you got to have secondary. Medicare is, well, never mind.
Right. Yeah, it's.
What do we got?
It's so
we got a bidding war
complicated.
here now. Brandon Doherty says to Mr. Ruben Fairchild, the storm chaser, whether if you donate $5, I'll donate 10.
God. All right, look, before we get in trouble for this, and wind up in prison. Thank you, Helen Bertona, for hitting the tip jar tonight, and thanks to everybody for hitting the tip jar tonight. I think it's time that we all say goodnight.
Robert Lomnicki, is that right, Joe?
4 syllables, Joe.
Robert Lomnicki.
No,
Lomanicki?
Lomanicki, yes.
Lomanicki. Robert Lomanicki. Maggie P., the chairman. And by the way, Scott, don't get upset. We will do Briller Jeopardy. I have it safely tucked away in my Facebook drawer.
We'll do it next week.
We'll do it on Monday. Brandon Doherty, Dale Carter, Ken Musillo, Bobby Whitaker, Bogies Bees, Helen Bertona, but not Mr. Reuben Fairchild.
No.
I had to say that.
Listen, he does have an award named after him on this program.
Yes, exactly.
And he may win it himself if he keeps saying stupid stuff on the chat board. Bill, I love you, guy. You're the best. Thanks for coming on as always. You're always.
Thanks for having me. Wednesday nights are usually pretty good. My wife goes out for that's her solo night. That's her leave me alone. I'm coming home when I'm coming home, and so I got a lot of free time on Wednesday night. So if I'm off, that's when I join.
We love having you here, and
thank you.
I'll be thinking of you on Christmas Day, Bill. That's a lie, of course, but I'll say
well,
so good.
I got to take what I can get. That's good enough.
Yes.
Well,
thank
you got to get this. Big hugs and have fun with your family. And
wait a minute. Do you want to join in here to say good?
Yes.
Everyone have a great holiday. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Renata.
Merry
and
Christmas.
there she goes.
And there she goes.
I'm here.
She keeps this show on the air.
Yes. She keeps me in check.
Well, I think everybody has somebody that does that for them. Okay.
Thank you, Renato Rayo. So you get a thank you from Tom Contino.
Bill,
you
Joe.
enjoy disparaging me, Tom, but you don't disparage my wife.
Right.
I'll send her over and have you punch in the nose.
Bill, hopefully, we'll have you on soon. Maybe we'll have a snow event to talk about when we get into the new year. We'll see.
You want to know when we're going to have? You want to know when we're going to have the big snowstorm here in the Northeast? April the 8th. That'll be the day. That'll be the day of the total eclipse of the sun that everybody's been waiting years for, and that'll be. Boy, I never can remember when we had a big nor'easter with snow. This now the Northeast.
1982.
That was April 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Either way. All right.
If I act like all the weather weenies on Twitter, I'm looking at the control run of the Euro Ensemble at hour 354, and it's got a foot of snow north and west of the city.
Of course it does. The control run is. I don't. Whenever somebody brings up the control run, it's usually because they're trying to justify the fact that the operational runs and the ensembles are not showing anything. So they find one obscure member on the control run, that has the burial of a century, and they go, oh God, did they go out of their way to point it out? But the control run is never right. Okay, I mean the end shambles is hard enough to accept.
No, you want to know when people get really desperate, or when they really are going to get desperate for snow and cold weather? Then they're going to start looking for the Navy no gaps model.
Oh no, yeah.
Oh, that's really.
I used to say the Japanese, hear the JAMA, the Japanese model, but I've also read lately that it's actually, not it's not bad. I mean I don't get to see, I see very little of it. It's not widely available. And I saw a post from someone on Twitter who was saying that China's weather models are actually pretty decent. But who has access to that? Because we don't.
No idea. No idea.
Well, we could always use the French model, but they only run that 4 days a week, and then they take 2 weeks off for Christmas and New Year's.
Everybody is saying, Joe, we shouldn't sign off until we hit 100. We're at 95 now.
Okay.
I
don't know if you remember, Bill. You may or may not remember. This goes back a ways, but there was a time I'm thinking it was sometime in the early 2000s,
Hmm.
when the internet was pervasive enough, and you could get weather models on the internet. And the Canadian model, apparently, uh, something went wrong with their computer, and it happened like in the second week of December,
Hmm.
and because of vacations, Christmas, New Year's, they couldn't fix it for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, okay, that they had no Canadian model run because
Oh,
of how they do things up there.
oh, I
I,
thought you were going to tell me it was that it was as bad as the GFS during that time that it still ran.
no, it didn't run for like 6 weeks. You couldn't get it because there was a
I
it was a a computer part. It had to do with communicating the stuff out. I'm sure the people that worked there got it, but it had to do with, I guess, communicating the stuff out. And they had to get this part. They couldn't get the people that worked on maintaining all that stuff. Basically, they were off for 6 weeks, so it wasn't going to get fixed until they got back.
Oh boy, that would never fly here. First of all, if it was even for like 30 minutes, the Capitol Weather Gang would have a whole article about it, bashing the weather service.
Oh yeah,
So,
no,
By the way, Tom Cartino, the people who are wondering, and Mr. Fairchild, that is not a telescope. That is what is called a parallelogram mount. And I put my 25 by 100 binoculars on that mount when I'm outside looking at the sky. And I call my 25 by 100 binoculars my Dolly Partons. I mean, most people have standard 7 by 35 or 7 by 50. These are 25 by 100s, and they stick out way out like this. And they weigh about 10 pounds. I have a counterweight at the bottom there to counter the weight of these binoculars. You cannot hold 25 by 100s with your hand, and that's so when I'm not using it, I put the stand in the background there, so it's not really a telescope or anything. It's a special type of tripod for the big binoculars. So there you go.
Well, on that note, Dolly Parton, by the way, watches this show, Joe. You just so you know.
Which is why I mentioned that.
Right? I mean, she's one of the people that's lurking in the background, along with Taylor Swift and a few others. So we wish them a Merry Christmas, and Merry Christmas to you and to Joe and to Bill and to everybody on the chat board and everybody watching tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which kind of went off the rails, but what the hell? We need to go off the rails every once in a while. So we'll see you back on Boxing Day at 7:35 p.m. Nighty night.
Night night, folks. Merry Christmas. Happy Festivus.
for the rest of us, yeah.
For the rest of us.